We all dream of having that Instagram-worthy home office. Super minimal, cozy atmosphere, a place where we can spend all day just working on our own projects. But is that even really possible when your home office also doubles as a full-time content creation studio? Welcome to my channel, my name is Robert, and today I'm going to give you a full home office tour and share with you how I try and balance aesthetics and function, as well as share some tips that I've learned along the way that might help you in the predicament that you might be in. So this is actually a spare bedroom in my home. When I was house hunting, this was the main thing I was thinking about when looking at room sizes, as I knew I'd be spending most of my time in my home office. It's a pretty decent size for a home office, but there are some obstacles in the way. My content usually revolves around my desk setup, so finding a placement for that was the key starting point to planning my home office. But with my desk measuring 150 by 80 centimeters, I wasn't exactly left with a bunch of options. I couldn't place it in this alcove as the desk was just too wide, nor on the chimney wall as there was a fireplace there, and neither on this back wall as there was a large radiator. So really I was only left with this wall for my desk, but that also left me with all this space around it to do pretty much whatever I wanted. So I looked for inspiration from the greats, Matthew Ensina, Edward Lee, George Powell, the list goes on and on. I didn't want my home office to feel like an office. If anything, I wanted to feel more like a living room, just a cozy space where I really didn't mind spending 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day just sitting in this room creating content. So now you know where I started, let me show you how the office looks at the moment. When you first enter my office, you'll see a shelving unit from IKEA, which I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name of, but this was one of the only shelving units I could find to fit in this alcove, as it is such a narrow space. I wanted to have something here that allowed me to display a few things, as well as add some lighting so this side of the room didn't feel so dark. I also use it to store my camera bags and as a makeshift charging station for my camera batteries and really anything else that needs charging regularly. This is probably the one part of my office that I am thinking about changing, but we'll get to that later on. Next to that is what can only be described as an absolute unit of a calendar. This calendar is from a brand called Stendig and was actually originally designed by a famous designer, Massimo Vignelli, if I'm pronouncing that right, in 1966. Soon after the calendar was launched, it was actually entered into the permanent collection of the MoMA New York. So if it's good enough for the MoMA, then I guess it's good enough for my own home office. Heading over to the chimney wall, you'll see a frame of a fireplace, as well as a tiny 100 centimeter round mirror. This is actually the latest addition to my home office, as I want to add some more pieces that made it feel just a bit more homely. And I managed to pick up this mirror for almost half price at around £110, which is actually a bit of a steal. Not only do I think it makes the space feel more homely by partnering with the fireplace, but it also makes the space feel so much bigger. And because of how big the mirror is, it actually reflects so much light. So in the darker spaces of the home office, it actually makes it feel a bit more brighter. Before I forget, I will make sure to leave a links for all the products I mentioned down below, where I can find them. And in the next alcove, you'll actually find what is my favourite part of this office. I call this my cozy corner of the home office, and I 100% stole this idea from one of my good friends on Instagram, Fazia, after seeing this image when looking for home office inspiration. It's made up from this cabinet from IKEA called Besta, which I customized to be a combination of the dark brown wood and an oak veneered tabletop. I have one side open to showcase most of my design book collection, and the right side with a cabinet door, just so I can hide away the absolute mess of products I'm currently not using. But I'm actually thinking of putting another cabinet door on the other side to just shut off where I've got my design books. I'm thinking this just because it might make the space feel a bit neater than it does put so much pressure on me having to make it look nice when I'm filming. On top of that, I have this beautiful solid oak monitor riser that I'm using more as a shelf, just to display a few things like a lamp, my incense, and a couple of items that used to be on my desk. Above that, I have 2 IKEA pegboards, which again I just use to display some things like spare keyboards, some prints, as well as a couple of small buckets that I like to keep spare wires in for when I need them. And lastly, I have a floating lac shelf from guess where? IKEA, which I have some design books, another keyboard, and this plant which just seems to be thriving with all of this natural light. A big reason why I love this part of the office is because it just fits so perfectly. There's just the right amount of breathing space around everything, and it's all so aligned. It's almost like this alcove was made specifically for this purpose. This space also just allows me to display so much stuff, so it really brings out my personality. And opposite that, you have what you see most of the time, my desk setup. I have just recently made an updated desk setup tour, so I will be skipping this part of the office tour, as nothing really has changed that much. Except that I have changed my mouse to the Logitech MX Master 3S once again, but if you do want to watch the updated desk setup tour, I'll make sure to make it the first link down below. Next to my desk is one of the best purchases I've made so far, and it's this workbench from Louis Vuitton. Yeah, I'm kidding, it's from IKEA. This is what I use for storing all of my filming equipment and all the gear that I just use regularly. And it perfectly fits 4 of these buckets, which I use to store more wires and just all random stuff that is worth keeping hold of. I think this just fits in so well with the rest of the office, and for the size and price of it, you really can't go wrong. Especially if you've always wanted one of those husky workbenches, but don't have the size or the budget for it. Lastly, above that, I have a Marvel illustration set by Ollie Moss, which I think could probably do with reframing or putting each illustration into its own square frame. Either way, I love this piece so much, so it's definitely not leaving this office anytime soon. So you may be thinking, why is function an issue with my home office? Well, that's because my office doesn't usually look like this. It looks like this, and most of the time this. My job being a content creator means that pretty much every day I'm either filming or photographing something, which means I need lighting equipment, C-stands, tripods, camera gear, and a spare desk to be moved around. So my home office is constantly having to adapt in order to bring my ideas to life, which in results doesn't exactly look Instagram worthy, and very quickly makes even my space feel too small. And I can't really just pack all this stuff away and neatly store it in a corner, as I use most of this stuff every day, so having it there ready to use just saves me so much time and effort. I've spent a lot of time trying to come up with solutions in order to balance aesthetics and function, so let me share with you some tips that I've learned the hard way, and hopefully you'll be able to implement them into your own home office. Over time, when creating content, you will accumulate a ton of gear. Stuff that maybe you purchased when you're just starting out, but later replaced, but you kept hold of both as you never really know if you're going to need it again. But this just leaves you with a pile of stuff that you don't use and you need to find a place for. So what I did fairly recently was I went through everything in my home office and I truly asked myself, when was the last time that I actually used this? If the answer was something along the lines of, I can't really remember, then it was time to go. And I couldn't believe the amount of stuff that was actually in that pile. So I listed all that stuff on eBay, and I would say in about a few weeks, all of that stuff was gone. Which just left me in such a win-win position, as it means I got rid of a ton of stuff and freed myself up with a lot more storage space. Plus, I had a bit of extra cash, so I invested in a couple of pieces that I knew would take my content to the next level. But let's say you've done the first step and you're still left with a pile of stuff that you need to find a home for. This is where you need to start thinking about storage solutions. And the problem with a lot of storage solutions is, well, they look like crap. I made this mistake of falling in love with shelving units, where I could put absolutely everything on display and really show off the stuff that I'm interested in. But I very quickly realized why this was a mistake. Because when it comes to things that you're constantly using almost daily, you need a storage solution where you can be messy, but from the outside looks neat and tidy. So investing in pieces that not only let you store everything away, but fit in with the aesthetics that you're going for, is something worth taking your time with. You are most likely going to have to pay a premium for this aesthetically pleasing storage solutions, but it's well worth it, as you're investing in long-lasting pieces of furniture, rather than just getting what you can get now to then later replace down the line. But it really depends on your situation. The biggest tip that I've learned along the way is you just can't have the best of both worlds. And sometimes you have to embrace imperfection in order to have more functionality. The more aesthetic that you make your home office usually means the less functional it is, and same goes the opposite way. So my best tip is to really think about what is the core purpose of your home office, as that will allow you to put in perspective what is needed and what is just nice to have. So for me, filming content, I need to make sure I have a lot of space where I can move all of my lights and my tripods so I don't have obstacles in the way. As usual, I put a story up on my Instagram, so I'm just going to go through a few questions. How do you keep your home office looking clean and tidy? The real answer to this is I don't. Most of the time when you see my home office on Instagram, it looks pristine, but when you see it from behind the camera, the rest of the home office is a mess. It usually just gets piled up with, empty boxes, plates, products that have came in for me to review. So it is a real challenge to keep it neat and tidy. But I am trying to make it more and more of a daily habit for myself to set a time, say like 9 p.m, where I shut down my Mac and spend 10 to 15 minutes just tidying up. It's one of those small things that we usually put off, but when we actually do it and then the next morning come back into our home office, we feel so much better than having to walk into your home office and it's just an absolute tip. So that's what I'm trying to do, but yeah, it's a lot easier said than done. What is your favorite piece in your home office? For the longest time, I probably would have said my IKEA storage unit or my desk, but now I would have to say it's my mirror. Even though I only recently added it to my home office, it just makes a massive difference to the overall vibe. It makes it feel less like I'm in a spare bedroom and more like I'm in a living room. And it's 100% a piece that will stay with me forever. Even when I move house and I have a new home office, maybe it won't be in that room, but it'll be in the living room or the hallway or kitchen. So I've definitely invested wisely in this piece. What inspired the colours and the overall vibe? Like I showed at the beginning of this video, just looking at other creators' home office setups and seeing what they've done has really inspired me in, building my own. But my old desk setup was a very dark space. I was in a very small room where I didn't have much space at all between my desk and my bed. So I wanted this room to be the opposite of that. Instead of dark, I wanted it to be light. Instead of cramped, I wanted to feel open and breathable. But it definitely didn't start out this way. I definitely had moments where I tried to cram more things into it, like a couch, which really didn't last long. So it's definitely a long process, and I'm sure when I make my next video updating you on my home office, it'll probably look a little bit different. So I hope you found this video somewhat useful, or if not, just entertaining. Just remember, when you see all these beautiful home offices on Instagram, that for a lot of them, how it looks behind the camera is a very different story. If you have any advice on what you think I could improve in my home office to just balance the functional aesthetics a bit more, do leave a comment. The one thing I am thinking of at the moment is taking out my shelving unit in the corner and using that as a designated area for my lighting equipment. And maybe put up some hooks that I could put my bags on, but I'm not sure at the moment, so let me know what you think of that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.